All right, here we go. I'm here with Lee Glickstein of Speaking Circles International, who is also involved in other interesting projects and ideas and things. And I've known Lee for a number of years now. I've participated in his Speaking Circles work, gotten a tremendous amount out of it. I've incorporated aspects into my work. And so Lee's very much about communication, and he and I often talk about topics related, at least in my mind, to consciousness and to what's happening socially, politically. And the theme of this series, the project, kind of a conversation project series, I call Consciousness, Communication, and Civilization. And by civilization, I just kind of wanted a very broad, well, I wanted 3 C's. But in terms of civilization, like just, social, political kind of issues, but like in the broadest spectrum, possibly to talk with people about, what's happening with our civilization. Where are we in the grand, sweep of time and evolution, and what's really, what's going on? How do we be aware of that? What do we do to support positive things happening in the world? But also, how do we understand what's going on in the world? Anyways, Lee, you're somebody that I thought would be useful, valuable, interesting for me, and I'm thinking for others to speak with about these topics. And but if you'd like to say anything to introduce yourself a little bit and our relation, kind of how we know each other and things, take whatever time you want to say a few words about you, and then we'll start to get into some of these topics.
Well, John, from experiencing your wonderful work, I know that we're both trying to basically do the same thing, which is to create a listening environment so that people truly can figure out what the hell is going on with them. Listening and systems, you have your ways of bringing out people's peacemaking qualities, and I think what I do brings out their self-peacemaking qualities and being able to speak into other people's eyes in a way that's authentic.
Indeed. That's been very much my experience working with you, how powerful your approach is. And actually, as you say that, maybe you could say a little, you just kind of referenced it a little bit there in what you said, but to say a little more about your approach and how you developed it, and actually how you've developed it online, so we can kind of use it with each other, right, as we're gazing into the eye of the camera and speaking to each other. Even right now, it's present for me, and I imagine for you. So would you like to say a little bit more about your methodology and approach, kind of
and I'll do it into the camera so that the listeners and viewers have a chance to look right into my eyes. I started Speaking Circles about 25 years ago to deal with awful stage fright with me and other people, this problem of speaking, public speaking anxiety. And I wound up realizing, because I had awful stage fright until 25 years ago, most of my life, I realized the block wasn't a block in speaking, it was a block in receiving the available listening. So I started doing speaking circles where I coach the listeners to give that soft, steady gaze of kind regard. And then the person whose turn it is would have a finite period of time to speak into that listening, or not even speak, just feel into the listening and see when words would arise. So they would learn that if they could be with one person at a time at a speaking circle, they could do that in the real world. And when you're with one person at a time, being more interested in seeing their listening, seeing them so they feel seen. In other words, seeing them instead of, you're looking at me, I better make an impression. So that is how I got over my stage fright, and I wrote the program internationally, trained a lot of facilitators where we worked in person, and then came the virus. And just to shorten this piece, how do you do this on Zoom, right? Well, it turns out that through a little ingenuity, we can do the eye thing. So for instance, if I'm talking to a group on Zoom and I'm looking at somebody on the screen and I say, John, so John, and when you hear your name, you look in the camera and I have you on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody can see you. And then I'm talking and they say, so Jim looks in the camera, I have Jim. So we do get the one-on-one, and it actually turns out to be a very intimate way of doing the speaking circle work on Zoom. And even after this virus is over, if it's ever over, I'm going to be doing these because people like them and there's no geographic boundary. I could do this with people around the world, which I do. And I'm kind of liking it. I may never leave my home again.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll share my experience with it, which is how powerful I've experienced it to be up in front of a group and in your circles when it was in person, is a small group, and the power of looking at one person at a time into their eyes and really being with them and allowing the words to flow from the presence of gaze and just giving our full attention. So in my work with empathic communication that comes out of the work of nonviolent communication, that it's a lot about the listening, listening with empathy and empathic listening, which you coach the audience kind of in your groups to listen with a quality of empathic presence. And then to be able to get up though and speak from that place, to speak from presence and actually being with one person at a time and really mindfully doing that and having the words just sort of come out or not, or when to go into just silence and when the words. So I just found that so transformative, really. I started bringing that into my workshops and I found it hard to remember or sustain because I don't know, I think there's a really deep vulnerability in doing it. But every time I did it, it just changed the quality. I could feel something shift in the room, and I would even let people know what I was doing, and I could see them kind of light up and get the difference when I was really being with one person at a time. So it's been really, really useful, powerful for me, and how to bring that quality of presence into our speaking as well as our listening. And then for me, it's really about, you call it relational presence, right? So presence for me is another word for awareness, mindfulness. And then for me, consciousness is kind of the larger term maybe that could mean that kind of whatever we're aware of is also made of that awareness, kind of that it's all essentially made up of the same essence of consciousness, so that there's that unity of experience. And so, but the way that the words can kind of come out of, whether speaking or listening, that relational field of awareness and attention and presence, I find that's what you're doing in your work. What I'm trying to do in the kind of more maybe internal or one-on-one communication work. So anything you want to say more about like your experience of that?
Well, yeah, I'm feeling into what you're saying, that when it's turned into speaking circle, one learns, one sees what they say when they speak to one, when you have one person's attention at a time. But when we start this, here's the key. When we start this practice, even people who are maybe particularly people who are really articulate and they know how to speak, but when you give them the exercise of really be with one person at a time, when they start the practice, at first, almost everybody is like, duh. There's no way to immediately do this and start to be that way with people. So everybody we're all so much the same. So we say, well, I don't know. They say, John, and then John looks in the camera and says, John, because I'm so with you that I'm suddenly, am I meshing? Am I meshing? What's the word? Am I melding or welding or becoming, but what sort of
Merging
happens,
kind of, yeah.
merging. But what happens is it takes a couple of circles where you discover how to attune without having anything to say.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what we need to do in consciousness. Is now I'm looking at myself and I'm a little, I'm not quite looking at myself, but I'm seeing myself.
Mm.
And what does it mean for me to come to zero and know I really have nothing to say? Now I'll look at you because I know you're good at looking at the camera. I have nothing to say. I really have no, I think in order to find out how to be totally attuned and speak beautifully and no anxiety with an audience, you first have to realize you really have nothing to say. All it is me and you. This is it. I can't talk over that like I'm going to make sense. No, it's so I sense you. I sense another person. And by putting your entire effort into doing that, and you start giving up, or what should I say? Maybe I'll say, I have nothing to say. I'm just with you. And then, as you've experienced, you start naturally flowing into this communication line. And that's when you find your power of expression from nothing.
Yes. I've really felt that difference of kind of being kind of up in the head, thinking about what to say and trying to figure out what to say, versus I think you sometimes call just surrendering into the listening field. Right?
That's where the intelligence is. It's in the listening.
Yeah. And then like the words seem to come from a different place.
They come from a different place.
And it feels different and it feels better. And it seems the words, the communication seems to land differently with the listeners when it's happening in that kind of way. So yeah. I just, I remember an early association I had with, I would hear Eckhart Tolle, the spiritual teacher, talk about how he would do that. Like, at least that's what he said he does. He's done since he started teaching, where he doesn't prepare anything. He doesn't know what he's going to say. He just gets up there and he gets quiet, and then it comes, and then he just starts speaking. And I always wanted to do that. I thought, oh my God, that's the way I want to speak. That's the way I want to present or do all my work in front of people. But I didn't know how to do it. And then I found you and oh my God, this is so perfect, because that's what we practice. But it's, I think I want to say, it doesn't, as you said, it doesn't happen right away. Like people like Eckhart Tolle, maybe, I don't know what happened for him and people like him, but I've found that it takes a lot of practice to, and courage really to really kind of let go of the mind trying to be in control. Right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, you say Eckhart Tolle, he goes to a quiet place.
Yeah.
That's how he might see it. He goes to a quiet. We see he goes to a quiet place, but he's doing something beyond that to get to where he's going and where we're going, and we're doing this the right way. You go lower than the quiet place into a stillness. That's why so you go into a stillness, and then when you go into a shared stillness. So at the bottom of it, when I don't know what to say, and maybe I would ordinarily go, duh, I don't know. It's more like, oh, we're sharing stillness. We can share stillness with all humanity. We right now. And I see that connection is at the bottom of the breath when we exhale and we go down here. There's a pause before we have to inhale. And that's where I connect to the vast stillness of the earth and the shared stillness that we have, so that when we speak from here, we're speaking from the shared stillness. That's what Eckhart Tolle is getting to do. It's not just, well, it's nice to be in a quiet place, but it's a shared quiet place.
Yeah, as you say, like a field of stillness. I like you say that shared stillness. So it's like a field that's shared, and the words can kind of come out of that. And you also call it this relational presence, relational stillness. Yeah.
I'm thinking that the great speakers, what takes it to be an inspiring speaker is they're speaking from the unity of us. It's not me and you, not me and the audience, and even one-on-one, it's not me and you. It's when you speak from us. Ooh, there's a new code.
Yeah.
It's speaking. You can't speak from us as a principle. You have to take step by step. You have to go, oh, I don't know what to say. Oh, go down to go down to shared stillness, go down to this is enough without words. Yeah. And then the words are not breaking the stillness. The words aren't breaking the silence.
Yes, that's a paradox, right? Because the words are thought, mind activity, and yet it's coming out of that field of stillness, and so that it's different. It's a different kind of, yeah, almost like the words don't shatter that stillness in a way. Yeah, 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 exactly. And I'm thinking too of what I was saying about the need for practice, and yeah, that I think it takes real courage to, well, and I just also want to say, like the safety of the space that you create in your circles, whether it's virtual or in person. I just the people that I've met that do work with you, just it's almost addictive how nurturing and kind of wonderful that space is of this listening, these listeners who are really available and there to give their full attention, their eyes, as you say, give the speaker your eyes, right?
You're soft, steady eyes.
And you give the coaching to the listeners, of a kind regard, of a certain sort of body language and facial expression and gaze of the eyes, and all that I think creates this real sense of safety and connection, a kind of real, just non-verbally, right? And then though it's so that you can it's safe enough to get up and try to surrender your mind and let the words find us, right? Let the words come as they want to come. Right. But it's very challenging to do that out in the world because you don't have necessarily that same listening field. But with practice, building up courage to just keep surrendering into that place, it's but I find it takes courage and it takes a lot of practice.
Well, what's fascinating to me is that it takes less practice now because say I have a group of 5. My Zoom circle is usually 5 people for an hour. And when I have, say 4 of them are regulars, so they're in it. And there's a newcomer, brand new. It's catching, it's contagious. Yeah. The 4 people and me are establishing a field of acceptance that cannot be resisted.
Yeah, acceptance.
So a newcomer who goes last, we have 3 turns, 1 minute, 6 minutes, and 2 minutes. By the time they go last, they're done.
They get it.
Because part of the culture is that everybody really is there for a newcomer because they know how they were when they started. So it's really supportive of newcomers. By the time a newcomer goes, all the defenses are blown. It's like you've come into a safe space and your body knows it. And suddenly there's no more strategies. So immediately newcomers often, they get it. Now they're functioning at a high level of authenticity, flow, and eyes. And yeah, they need to do it a few times before perhaps they take it out into the real world, if we ever have a real world again. But it doesn't take that much for them to get the experience when there's other people who are
Other
like,
people that are already doing it. Yeah. That feels, that matches my experience of being new when I was new, and also being more experienced and having new people come in. So yeah, I've really had that sense too, the way that the field, if you will, does really quickly draw people into a felt sense of how to do it, how to be in the listening field, and then how to speak from it. If others are holding, as some people say, kind of holding the vibration, quote unquote, right? So,
yeah.
yeah. Um, so another thing is coming to my mind related to this, kind of tying together your work and the work that I do, which you've had a little bit of experience of. You were gracious enough to come to one of my events.
Well, you were gracious enough to invite me.
Wow. It was so great to have you there. And so the basic components of this approach to communication: observation, feeling, need, request. I want to try to map that a little onto what we're talking about with your circles and this approach of relational speaking presence. But so observation for me is we observe the mind, and instead of being so identified and absorbed into the mind, sort of that ability to step back and be aware. And I think that's the sort of the first part of what you create. Instead of just speaking automatically out of our habitual thought patterns, it's like this stepping back and noticing the listeners and being aware of ourselves and being aware of our mind, either being quiet or not, or what. So there's that. And then feeling is like the body, being able to really drop in. You emphasize a lot the breath, right? So the breath that really takes us down into the depths of the body. And there's a deep wisdom in the body, right? And it's also where we touch our emotions and our sensations, right? But that's still an awareness. But then for me, need, going to need, and Marshall Rosenberg talked about our universal human needs. But that for me is going to the universal, beyond our separate sense of a mind and a body. But how do we go beyond just the separate self? And I think what in your circles happens is a going to the collective experience of the entire. You just said it a little bit ago, I forgot the phrase, but you're kind of in this sense of being a we as the speak, instead of speaking as a me to a you or to they, it's like speaking as we, we're in, not as we, but kind of in the experience of we. And that to me is like getting to this universal level of need consciousness, need energy, need spaciousness. To me, awareness is a kind of spaciousness of being aware. And that I think that's what happens in this field you talk about in this practice and relational speaking, listening in a group.
Well, John, when you get up to begin your workshop, I couldn't help but notice, you get up there for what, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is, you say hello to people.
Yeah.
And you, right from the start, you're speaking from we. By the way, the speaking from we is a new phrase. I'm going to write it down.
Yeah.
Because a person is either speaking from we or they're not, or they're pretending. They're pretending to speak from we, like many politicians pretend to speak from we. But it's undeniable when you do that. So speak as a speaker, and that's what we learn in speaking circles, how to speak from we. But you were doing that, before you came to speaking circle, but you're probably doing it, maybe
much better now. Yeah.
But that's what, if you're doing a workshop, if you're doing a talk, for you people who are presenting, doing talks, leading a meeting, find out what it means to speak from we. Because if you're not speaking from we, you're closing down something important. If you are speaking from we, you can get away with a lot of not being completely articulate.
Right, because there's so much connection in the we, right?
Yeah.
And I love your invitation and your practice. Just like, you don't even have to speak. Like, don't even worry about talking. If you want to just be quiet the whole time, that's fine. There's so much permission to let the mind just get soft and quiet and still. And then, so yeah, the we, that I want to stay on that theme, because what I just see on so many levels as human beings, I think what we're really reaching for as a species now is to make, and I've heard Eckhart Tolle and others talk about this evolutionary jump from the sense of kind of being identified with our mind and our thinking and our separateness, how we're separate, right? And a me and everybody else and everything else out there, to something much more, people like Thich Nhat Hanh, even Charles Eisenstein, who's a kind of a newish kind of thinker, thought leader right now that's very popular, talks about interbeing. So our beingness is interrelated. We are interbeings. So I think that's what happens in what you're inviting as a public speaking, group speaking, is this getting connected to the interbeing, to the interconnectedness, not just a separate me and a separate you, but this integrated, holistic we that's a field of, there's separateness, but there's also unity. Yeah. And you tap into that, and then you let the words, the speaking and the listening happen in that way. So I hadn't really thought about it this way until we started talking like this, but I think that's what you're doing.
Yeah, and there's something I wanted to say about that because I start to worry about, it's not airy fairy, hippy dippy, like speaking as we, and I realize part of speaking from we is I don't want anyone's time wasted. That's where the separate the separate person within the we is also, I'm not going to waste anyone's time. So it's not just, it's we, we can do anything we want. There's part of me that's taking care of the time really strongly while coming from the we. I think it's both,
right?
Yeah, the combination from speaking from we and the tough love.
Yeah.
All shows up together.
I'm glad you're saying that, because I really feel strongly that, some people that, as you're kind of pointing to, can get so into the unity consciousness and how we're all one that it starts to seem a little out there and not so grounded into something, doesn't feel so real. So I really believe deeply in that it's both. So it's like there's connecting to the we without losing the me, right?
The power
of our individual, particular, authentic, unique voice, right? And leadership and meaning, and what's meaningful, and speaking in ways, but at the same time being able to expand into this more collective field, which, for me, in a very practical way, is to be connected to the kind of energy, life force in my body, and to be kind of a sense of holding the room. You probably do this too, in a way. You let the gaze be wide, right? So we can be looking at the lens and the camera and each other, but we can also be aware of all the space in the room.
The periphery.
The peripheral, right? And you kind of be aware of that too, which has this kind of larger holistic field. So that's a kind of, as well as being with one person at a time and being with the whole group that way. So I think it's both. It's not one or the other. We don't lose our separateness, but we're not stuck in only being separate, right? This is a way to hold both. Beautiful, beautiful, Lee. Well, I see that we're about halfway-ish or so. So I'd like to transition to the other topic, unless there's anything about this that you want to say.
No.
All right.
I have nothing more to say about this.
Well, that was very fun. I ended up hearing and saying things that seemed fresh and new and very very insightful to me. Okay. Now here's a transition I thought of, because a little while ago, that you'll like this one, because for those listening or watching, Lee and I have conversations and we talk politics and amongst other things. So you mentioned that great speakers have a way of doing this, maybe kind of intuitively. And someone flashed into my mind who many consider a great speaker, but in a way that isn't necessarily with the values of empathy, compassion, love, care that at least we associate with it. I think of Donald Trump, who is a speaker who many consider just an incredible way he connects with his audience. There's, you know, thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And yet that he seems to do something. So it might be interesting to start, you know, with what's going on there in relation to what we just talked about. But then I'd like to take that into kind of talking about politics right now and social, like what are we doing as human beings on a social and, you know, global human level. But let's start with, you know, you and I sometimes talk about Donald and his you know, various escapades and whatnot. So
it just occurred to me, talking about Donald Trump has nothing to do with politics. It's not a political conversation. It's a
speaking. How he?
I don't even, and I don't, you know, and boy, I'm kind of the thing that's coming through as you talk about is that he's doing something else. He's speaking to base emotions. He's speaking to fear. I'm talking about his base.
Yeah, right.
He's only speaking to fear and rage. He's expert, but he's got he's brilliant at that narrowness, but that's hardly what anybody's doing as speakers or as leaders. He's in a whole different game. He's just inflaming emotions brilliantly.
Fear and anger emotions, yeah.
Brilliantly. And I'll tell you, if that's all you wanted to do and you had no consciousness, no conscience, and no values, and no moral compass, and all you wanted to do was inflame base emotions, I think that's real easy. I think he's got the easiest job in the world. He hates it, but it's nothing. It's just him being him. He doesn't have to figure it out.
Yeah.
But
there's something he's doing that is effective. It's very effective at connecting with this whole group. Is so many people, and he seems to do that.
But only this group, only in relation to the other groups who this group hates. It's only about we are together. Yes, we are one.
Polarizing against the other, others.
Against. He's only speaking against.
Yeah.
And it's much easier in life to just put down things. Than to lift up things. So it's like an idiot savant kind of capacity.
Well, yeah, like he's using it in this way that's having these harmful effects in all kinds of ways we can talk about. But there is a way that I wonder if you see that the way he kind of speaks off the cuff, he almost like doesn't know what he's going to say next, and therefore he doesn't feel obliged to maybe, you know, have one thing line up truthfully with the next, you know, 5 minutes later or 10 seconds later. But he's just like free forming it all the time. Right. But there's something, I wonder if somehow he has tapped into this principle, you know, how, like in Star Wars, you have the dark side of the Force, but you're still like the power of the Force. Right. So the way that he can be so spontaneous and so like present with his audience and letting his words just sort of come out in this way that he's not even thinking. He's just channeling some kind of dark ability to rile people's, as you say, these sort of baser emotions. So do you have any thoughts on that level?
He's projecting his rage brilliantly, and other people have the similar rage, and it's easy to connect on the rage level. The crazy thing is, I mean, he may end our civilization sooner than it was going to end without him. I mean, he may be destroying everything we hold near and dear, but there's no rhyme or reason other than his rage and his hatred. There's nothing. What the hell? I don't know what kind. I'd be a terrible commentator on MSNBC.
Well, it sounds like it sounds like you're sort of focused on the way he's like what he's stirring up in people and the really damaging, dangerous effects of that.
You want me to, you're kind of pointing to there's something he's doing that's also extremely effective, and it would be interesting to know what it is.
Well, again, I haven't really thought about this until now, and I thought about it earlier when you mentioned something about great speakers, and but
Tell me what you think.
I'm just wondering out loud, kind of, and then checking with you about this connecting to using these almost without maybe consciously doing it. Some of these same principles of a sort of a we feel that with this kind of group in group out group kind of thing but that's some way of a kind of relational presence that he actually has a way to tap into that gets people kind of mesmerized by his ability to use words that really get right into people's kind of sense of trust and connection with each other within this in group, not so little. Anyway, so it's a curiosity, but we don't need to linger on there. Maybe let's just use that to springboard to.
Well, I will say, yes, he speaks brilliantly from we.
Yeah, we the ones against those
right
people over there, right?
We the good ones.
We the good ones, yeah. We the winners, yeah.
That's how I talk about our side. So
yeah. But in terms of going beyond just Trump or even party, Republican, Democratic Party and stuff.
Trump, I'm so glad.
Where as I see, what's happening, what's happening in our U.S. politics is a very, for us, especially living here, a very prominent symptom or kind of example of maybe what could be looked at as like a much deeper problem, or like it's a really kind of bad symptomatology of something much deeper, which I see, in terms of how about tying it back to what we talked about, that as a culture, even as a Western civilization, a sort of modern humanity, that we've so embraced this idea of a separateness and a competitiveness and a kind of that capitalism and consumerism is based on, that warfare and violence and fighting and it's this mindset kind of how we're not living in this space that we talked about a little bit ago with each other, just on a kind of cultural, societal level, right? We're very fragmented and kind of at odds. And Trump, some people like Trump are fanning that polarization. But it seems to me where humans are trying to get to is beyond this separate self-thinking mind into something we feel our interconnectedness, our interbeing. And we start operating more from that place. We set up systems and structures from that place that takes care of everybody's needs in a much better way. But I'm curious if you have any thoughts kind of related to that.
Yeah, I used to talk a lot and write about the illusion of separation, which is the reason for everything that goes wrong in our society. The illusion of separation. We are one, but we keep forgetting it every minute. So we have to keep remembering we're one, remembering. Otherwise, and that's what's filling the universe now. Politics and whatever is the illusion that we're not, the illusion that we're separate. And as long as we believe we're separate, we're going to be at each other's throats. So how do we keep breaking it? And it's not just once we have to break it. It's like a continuing, it's almost like a prayer. We're one, we're one, we're one. Every time something looks wrong, we're one. Even with Trump, we're one with Trump.
Yeah.
That's the only way out.
To the people that are doing the things we find most difficult to bear, to accept, to deal with, it seems so destructive. How do we still feel the connection, the underlying connection with even even those people, so that we can, yeah, kind of somehow get, as humans, get to some kind of different place.
I think, John, just this morning you had some attitudes or ideas about how to have more compassion for, say, Trump supporters. In fact, that's a wonderful area that I've never heard anybody be so eloquent. Maybe you could talk a little about some of the ways you see you can have that compassion.
Yeah, yeah. So I, through some experiences starting with last night and this morning, I got into such a deep appreciation for the conservative side of the political spectrum that that's about conserving things in tradition that are useful and valuable and that we don't want to lose sight of, we don't want to let go of. That, there is this need to grow and evolve and kind of keep moving into opening into new possibility, but it doesn't mean we have, we need to conserve whatever is valuable from the past as we move into some new futures, right? And I was just really getting so in touch with, because I'd had this experience last night and woke up with this morning of getting so out there in a certain way of thinking and experiencing things that I felt very kind of untethered in a way to kind of our more shared common reality. And I was just so appreciative of traditions that are just very concrete, practical, tangible, grounded. And I was just thinking, all the people that are really representing, and I so don't agree with a lot of the more specific ways of believing and acting and, all that. But that basic impulse to be kind of drawn more towards the conserving of the past and what's beneficial. I don't know. I just have it opened me to just, without having to, I don't agree with a lot of the ways that they go about it, but even Trump's, there's just the whole conservative side of the political. And then there's Trump and supporters of Trump and Republicans that are doing things I don't agree. But then, it's all part of that. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, as I say that, I'm not so sure about, some of the leadership, maybe on both sides, and the links to corporate money and power and all that stuff. That's probably like a different phenomenon. That is, I'm sure, a different phenomenon. But just the people that are drawn to this more conservative side of things, right? I just feel a lot of like appreciation, not at odds.
It's interesting. I might, when all this smoke clears, I'm thinking maybe I'm a conservative. A real conservative. Now I see all these never Trumper Republicans who are wonderful and they're eloquent and they know what's right and what's wrong, and they were Republicans, conservative Republicans, and they're not at home in the party. But if we ever get back to some Republican Party, I'm going to start listening like people like Michael Steele and Steve Schmidt. I said, well, Nicole Wallace, they're conservative. So maybe there's something really good. Maybe this is leading to, hey, maybe I'm conservative. But in the traditionals, in the classic conservative.
Yeah, in a classic way.
I'll certainly look into what they, I'm not going to poo-poo them like I used to.
Right. Yeah, like that's an important function or role or perspective. That perspective is just as important as the kind of opening into the unlimited new possibilities and progressive edges of change and wanting to keep doing that, which obviously that's important to kind of keep growing that way. But yeah, I just think it's important. It's really important to have both. And because there's a certain kind of security and groundedness, stability, dependability. There's something there that is real. And if you get too far from that, it gets too, I use word like unmoored, untethered, something like you just start floating out in the ethers and maybe you're not. I like the idea, like out of tradition, there's this sort of layering over generations and generations of people working stuff out and coming up with things. And there's this, there's something so solid. I think of, even religion that has tons of problems, but over thousands of years, these different religions have worked through so many different things. And there's a core of wisdom there, even though it gets used in all kinds of dysfunctional ways often. So anyways, yeah, that in terms of politics and what's going on in the world, I see that's somehow honoring of both the conservative and the liberal progressive together, not choosing between them, right?
So John, aside from understanding the conservative piece of the Trump thing, you've also been able to speak about appreciating or understanding Trump supporters at the most base, where they're going along with the lies. And you've even had you've gotten me into helping me bring my mindset to something about that's not even as evil as we are assuming, that somehow there's a way to see their behavior at the most repulsive, as this isn't beyond the norm. This isn't, this is something I can appreciate, I can understand.
At this deeper level. Yeah.
Tell me. I need another hit.
Yeah, in this moment, I don't know that I'd say more than I have about, even maybe if what you're saying is like overlooking the lies that he tells in order to kind of meet these needs for the kind of solidity and stability and groundedness, tradition, that kind of thing. I don't know if in this moment I would say more than that, actually, for now. Yeah. Yeah. But I do want to go a little bit even beyond this to just even as humanity, beyond politics, into kind of larger social ways that the ways we live on the planet with the nature, ecosystems, environment, that and I want to tie it to what we were just saying again of what's it gonna take to get to another place that isn't so unhealthy, dysfunctional, kind of beyond where we are now. I just feel like my sense is we're just in this place of just collapsing. Everything is just, seems to me anyways, breaking down and becoming just totally unsustainable. And then, what's the way forward? I mean, there's so many ways that people are considering, but do you have any thoughts on like at that level, the civilization level?
It's going to take an unpredictable event. Is there, they call that a black swan event? Is that the terminology for that?
Yeah.
It's going to take another complete surprise event that we could not have seen coming. Otherwise, we're screwed. That's my intelligent assessment.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Something will happen that hopefully that will be like a sea change, that will just, like when the Berlin Wall came down or the Soviet Union just kind of imploded, or like something that just suddenly everything changes, right? Something that triggers that.
I think that's what we're all waiting for.
And then in terms of, our work and what we were talking about earlier, do you have anything like about contributing to that, and preparing for that and supporting it happening through our own efforts and how we, kind of connect up with other people? Any thoughts you want to share more on that level for yourself?
Well, I want people to raise their voice. You know, I want people to say what they think. I want to hear leadership coming from every little nook and cranny. We need more leaders. We need voters. We need people who are going to speak up. In my own little way, that's all. I don't think of it as I'm going to make a big difference in terms of saving humanity.
Right.
Little by little, you know, one voice at a time, be liberated.
As you say that, I've heard people, you're reminding me, I've heard people kind of propose, like, instead of that we're going to change the current systems, it just seems so broken, like the entrenchment of corporate power and money and a certain way of thinking, and that the possibility to reform that, to go from what we have now into something very different, sustainable, healthy, you know, all that, the possibility of that happening is just seeming more and more like it's hard to imagine, versus just sort of being part of creating new systems. So even while those are still kind of there, how do we, who have maybe more of this inclination, how do we be part of this, somehow creating some new kind of parallel structures, systems, speaking up in a way, and connecting with other people in a way. And I wonder, just in terms of process, just what you and I were talking about, of this speaking into and listening in this sort of we field, and sharing that, of course, as we do, that you know, how to help other people learn about doing that, and then something about what we can create. I don't know what I'm getting in touch with as the words are coming to me is some kind of trust or faith that when we keep entering into that field, creating it and being in it, as you and I have been talking about, that something can get created. Something is possible that isn't about how many people on the earth are doing it. It's like just enough, some people and enough people doing it. And maybe that's it. That's what we do. We just keep doing what we're talking about and inviting more people into it. And that what gets created is not under our direct control, right? That's like this letting go of control and allowing that creativity to emerge. If we kind of hold that field, the we field, that, yeah, I don't know, that's what's going to do.
I'll go along with that, John.
Yeah?
I'll sign on to that.
Cool. Well, it's felt good to say it. You know? Okay, Lee. Well, any last thoughts, words, anything?
Well, I've got a friend who says if Trump gets reelected, why the hell am I talking about Trump? His last words. That if he gets reelected, we deserve it, and we need to go that much further down the path to destruction in order to explode into the new way.
Yeah.
So even if he wins, maybe that's for the best in terms of exploding the old systems.
Well, I'm glad you actually said that, because I've had the thought, but something about you verbalizing it right now, because there can be so much fear about, oh my God, what if Trump wins again? Isn't that going to be a catastrophe? But maybe actually Biden winning and kind of going back a little bit into the old, you know, kind of status quo, and it's all going to be okay, but it's not okay. Like, we are living in a way where it's completely unsustainable.
Go Trump.
Yeah. But it's like, who knows? We can't control that. We're not wise enough to know. And if he does get it, that might be the thing. That might be the thing that just galvanizes so much eruption of
that's it.
Change.
That's it. Yeah. Go further. Go all the way.
So who knows? Who knows? I like.
Also, we got to be healthy individually. We're responsible to be healthy. That's something people forget.
Yeah, no matter who's president or whatever,
right.
Like it's not working. It's broken. So like, we can just create it no matter what. Even if whatever happens there, we can still keep doing it. So I thank you for those last words, Lee. I'm gonna put us back on gallery view at the end to close and just say, Lee, thank you so much for taking this time. I just so enjoyed having this focus of conversation, and it's really been enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care.
All right. Take care.